All right, hi everybody, John Meadows here with a special guest, the 27-time Mr. Olympia, right? 17, 27. So before we get started, I've told Jay this, but I want you guys to hear this. So when Jay won the Arnold Classic one year, I had a friend that organized the champion seminar. The seminar was on Sunday. The individual winners of each class, they went to Veterans Memorial and they gave like a little speech and more like a little Q&A. And so I got my tickets to go watch a show and get backstage by offering my chauffeur services. So I got to take the champions from their hotel over to Veterans Memorial and then take them back. And guess who I did that for once? It was Jay.
John was my driver.
I was his driver in my old Oldsmobile at the time. And
what year was that though? So
I
was 02, 3, and 4. So
Branch was in it.
Had to be the later years.
It was, I want to say 4. I just remember you literally like smashed everybody.
All right.
Like it wasn't even really close. I remember it was really cool. I got to be backstage, so I got to take you to your hotel and back, and I was just like for me, it was the coolest thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Now I already had done in the USA in 1999. Actually, I got 4th with that show, so I was already on a national level. But to me, man, I love bodybuilding. I'm still like a little kid, so I was so excited. I was really cool. Jay gave me his card, and I didn't want to impose on him, so I really only asked him one question. You probably don't remember this, but I said, "Hey, man, you have any tips for my tan? Like I can't get my tan right." And you're like, "John, you got to get a base coat. You're pale. You got to get a base coat. Make sure you have that base tan." Like I never forgot that. That was the first ever tip I got from Jay.
A lot of tanning beds.
A lot of tanning
and
beds.
shave other than 2 days out from the show.
Yes.
Which a lot of guys don't do nowadays. But yes. You know the tanning's changed now. Now the guys can spray. Remember, this is probably prior to spray tanning.
Yeah,
like
we were all bringing our bottles of protein.
Yeah, I mean and I did that honestly till the end a lot. I did a little spray tan, but I always got a base coat from the bottle tan.
Well, I did over 60 shows, and I would say 40 of them I had terrible color. And the only time when I started to get decent color was when I actually followed that advice. I said, you know what, I can't just show up and paint stuff on. I actually have a base tan. But so that was great advice for those of you who are very pale like me. So Jay and I just trained chest, and it's really cool because there's a lot of theories on volume, high volume, low volume, how hard you push. And Jay found what obviously works for him. And one of the things I noticed was when we started off, you talked about establishing a mind-muscle connection. Mm-hmm. And I feel like people kind of take that too lightly, honestly. I feel like people look at that as like some bodybuilding mythology, that there's no such thing. It's just you apply weight and everything lights up and activates. But talk to me a little bit about that first exercise, and not only just today, what you do in general of kind of establishing that mind-muscle connection.
Well, listen, I mean, just like you, I probably start off with the basic movements. And listen, I started before hammer strength and before a lot of machine work was actually relevant. So I did a lot of free weights and a lot of the core movements, and everything that you see in the gym, even machine-based or leverage-based, plate-loaded, is based off the standard lifts. So what I learned early on is really how to contract, and I was trained early on by the right people. I watched people in the gym, and I talked about in the magazines, you know, we use those routines to come alive, and now you have videos. So people watch YouTubes like this one right here, right? So they get to see what we just did. Whereas the explanation really wasn't as important through a magazine, right? So you kind of just followed, okay, I do X reps. Yeah, so you didn't talk about mind to muscle and really show how we close our eyes and we actually go through the motion. We set the seat at a certain level. We get under the weight. And when we contract, we don't touch things together where, you know, the days years ago, people used to bang the dumbbells together when they bench pressed or shoulder pressed, or, you know, they took the tension off the chest and put it on the triceps. And you can't teach that. It's something that you have to do through experience. So if there was a textbook that said, okay, this is how you bodybuild, right? We use Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, for example. You can't necessarily say, okay, this is what to do, because everyone's going to have a different training style. you and I both attest to that because we've worked with many different athletes, bodybuilders, athletes. People have different ways that they train. So you have to really put your mind into what you do. So I would attribute a lot of my success coming from leaving the gym the day prior and already knowing and thinking about, okay, tomorrow's workout is going to be this. You know, obviously when I walk in a gym like this, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to do this exercise, that exercise, but I kind of knew. I explained it to you as we got here and said, I usually start with a machine press and then I move to dumbbells, and it rolled through that. Everything was focused around 12 repetitions, but you have to get into the weight and you have to sometimes close your eyes and feel yourself, and you have to envision yourself going through the movement and how the muscle actually works. So you have to have some sort of understanding how the muscle expands, what your limitations on how much you stretch that muscle. We talked about our range of motion, right? Shorter rep ranges, longer rep ranges, such as Paul did. I was a shorter rep range guy, so I never took tension off the muscle. And most common question people ask me when they watch my videos, like, man, it doesn't look like you're moving the weight a lot, but I'm actually going through what the contraction of my muscle goes through. Because of a dense muscle, the rep range might be a lot shorter, but you have to keep that tension on the muscle at all times, and you're going to do the best to build round muscle tissue through repetitions and shorter rest periods. So my rest periods normally are 45 to 60 seconds. So it's enough to either change weights, the partner go, you go, and listen, I trained by myself, I trained with partners. I preferred by myself, to be honest, because 45-second set, that's really what kept the intensity up for me. So for me, I really worked on getting that mind to muscle contraction, tension, time under tension, but with speed and explosiveness. We explode out of the box, right? Whether it be the squat or the shoulder press or the chest press, even on a bicep curl, like I come up and I really contract. You mentioned in the hamstrings, you're really cranking the weight, right? But you have that resistance set in your head where you know what your muscle takes to contract and what muscle fibers are hitting. And I think, changing your training up, you're not going to train like a rock star every workout. So if you tell me, next week I'm going to do chest, it's not always going to be the same thing. And I never believed in switching the orders of the exercises either. Like, I could go in and do the same routine for the next 8 weeks, train chest once a week. And I'll get great results because I know how to train with that intensity. If you put that tension on the muscle, you have those rest periods where the intensity is up, you're going to get the progress because it's all going to be outside the gym where you rest and you grow and you recover. Your food, your intake, and we can talk about that. It's super important.
Yeah, so there were a couple things that really caught my eye today, and one of them is you were talking about explosiveness. And as a bodybuilder, I used to do powerlifting too. I trained at Louis Westside Barbell, and I had an athletic background. I used to run. I was a sprinter in high school and played football. So for me, I always wanted, in my mind, I want to produce force. And then when I got into bodybuilding, like you said, it was all, but you got to keep tension on the muscle. I feel like I train pretty explosively myself, but I never feel like it compromised my ability to, that mind-muscle connection, to feel it. And when I was watching you today, I could see the same thing. I could see control, and it was the same thing, but I don't see that with a lot of people nowadays. I just see this super slow stuff, and like, if it works for you, great. But it was just really interesting for me to see your style and the way you execute a repetition and to do it forcefully. But even though you're doing it forcefully, the tension is still on the muscle. That caught my eye, and it was something that I think people, they assume if you're training explosively that you're just losing attention on the muscle. And that's not true. Once you really learn the muscle and how it's working and how you can contract even fast, I think it's like a whole new ballgame for people.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not going to sit there like you said and say, hey, what you guys are doing is wrong. I don't know where it got picked up from. I watched, on Pumping Iron films, and like where I could actually watch the first videos, right? Yeah. I watched Ronnie Coleman. I trained with Ronnie Coleman. I mean, ballistic training, but in control. I mean, obviously it worked for him. But there's no right or wrong. I mean, listen, I had a very successful career, and I came out with zero injuries as far as I tore my bicep the last year I competed before I lost the Olympia. And I did the same thing. I did it just doing nothing crazy, just kicking up the dumbbells. It just was just tension, wear and tear, just a freak thing. But I retired now with clean joints. I have zero restriction on what I do. And I attribute it not only to the training, we talked about the tissue work and really releasing the fascia and keeping the fascia pliable, because listen, a tight muscle is not going to get the blood flow, it's not going to get the nutrients in there, and why are we eating and constantly taking the supplementation and everything else? We're trying to improve our muscle development. You're not going to, how's blood flow going to go into a muscle if it can't contract? And I see that with too many people now. If you even can like touch a guy's body part and say, oh my goodness, it's hard as a rock, because it's just not, it's not pliable. And when I used to work with all my therapists, they'd be like, man, even today, if I went to it, like say you're a therapist, you have that deep tissue person, they'd feel my body and say, oh my God, it's like, this is like
So
heaven for me.
Yeah, right in there. Yeah.
Because it's a conditioned, healthy muscle, whereas you don't have that with a lot of people, and that's a key also, because you're not going to be able to pump cement.
Well, it was cool. I was telling Jay that I've had the same girl, Sarah. She's worked on me for 15 years, once a week, sometimes twice a week. And how many times did you say you were doing it a week? At your
6 hours a week.
6 hours a week.
Yeah.
So that's I think I don't really hear too many guys anymore that get like deep tissue work, and like I think it's phenomenal. And like I can go in to see my girl and she'll be like, okay, this needs working out. Like she can tell immediately, this doesn't feel right, these things feel okay. But I've always been a big believer in deep tissue work, and like 6 times a week, like that's awesome. Like
yeah, well, it was 3 sessions a week at 2 hours, because my body was so dense. I mean, I was 300 pounds, you know, a lot of space, right?
Yeah.
Just my back alone, that was an hour just on my back. That was my lagging body part.
My back would take 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to have that back development, and they would carve that back out and work the shoulder joints and everything else. But you know, I developed this training. You know, I trained the same way at 18 that I do today at 46 tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the same exact theory.
Well, and then we went to compound movements. We were doing the dumbbell press a second. One of the things I try to do is, after I have used an exercise that's more for mind muscle connection, I try to then do the compound movement. That's what we did today. That always just felt good to me. I always felt like, for me personally, and I wanted to get your take on this, like for me personally, to walk into a gym and do a heavy bench press, I feel like there's a risk there with your soft tissue. So I always felt like, you know what, if we did that maybe second, and I feel like that really reduced the injury risk for me. And doing that after having established that mind muscle connection on the first exercise, I feel like made it work even better on the second exercise.
Yeah, and I mean, to get away from the chest training, which we did today, I mean, shoulders, I do side laterals first, always. I never go into a compound press. So I was always doing, I pre-exhaust the muscle. Same thing with quads. I do leg extensions to start. You know, to be honest, I mean, with my leg training, which I prefer to do quads and hamstrings together, always work best for me. Always hamstring training first. I would get the glutes and hams and everything all fired, because when I went into those heavy compound squat movements and leg presses, hack squats, lunges, everything was already worn back there, and your power is still going to come from your glutes, right? But more importantly, I was able to, it was a weak body part for me, so I always said, you know what, my quads are my easier body part to grow, let me pay attention to the more important, which was the hamstring, because from behind I was competing against the best guy ever from behind, Ronnie Coleman, right? Yeah. So he always beat me from the back, so I focused on doing more of the hamstring work first. So you have to have that open mind to that, and you have to be able to say, okay, well, this isn't the norm. I didn't start that way. I started with quad training always, because I wanted to go in and I wanted to squat 500, 600 pounds. Yeah. Till my nose bled. I stopped doing that and started focusing more on how am I going to benefit better from this.
Do you think if you would have continued to train that other way, do you think you probably would have had a higher chance of injury?
I'll be honest, I was getting muscle strains. I squatted, I think, up to 700 when I was 19, just because I could. I was strong, I was stupid, and I had to learn. I knew when to shut it down, and you know, I luckily had good people in my corner that just said, you know what, this isn't necessary for what you're doing. Your quads are your best body part. I actually stopped training my quads. I won nationals at 23, and I hadn't trained my legs really in 3 years besides extensions. So it goes to show, I mean, we talk about genetics. People have certain genetics for body parts. Listen, I lacked in the chest and arms. I had great shoulders and great legs. I was missing a back. I was missing all these. I had width, but I didn't have the thickness.
Gotcha. The other thing that we did today that just from conceptually that I thought was interesting too was, so we did our compound movement, we were 2 exercises in, and then we went to a movement where we really applied a stretch to the muscle. And one of the things I like to do, Jay, is once I have a lot of blood in the muscle, once it's fully pumped, then I like to lengthen it, use a really good range of motion. I feel like that promotes a lot of good things. So it was pretty cool seeing you do that today. Any thoughts on that?
I always tell people, especially with chest training, you press, stretch, press, stretch. So you're really engorging with the pressing, right? And then with the stretching movement, like a fly movement, such as with a cable, dumbbell machine, you're going to get that, open up that tissue more. So what are you going to get better out of that? More blood flow, right? Our whole goal for all the training isn't, we talked about rep ranges. We just said, okay, this is our rep. I didn't even count some. I said, how many did I do? My whole focus was, okay, how full can the muscle get? That's all I care about, because that's how I'm going to judge how successful my workout is. So if I get a crazy pump, I mean, there's other factors that would, hinder that, like if you're not eating or whatever else. But if I get a crazy pump, my success in the gym is done. So that's why I believe in push, pump, stretch. Push, pump, stretch, right?
Okay. So that certainly makes a lot of sense to me. That's how I've tried to design things myself. I feel like that promotes healthier joints too and flexibility, honestly. If you guys watched the chest training video we did, watch Jay's flexibility on his fly. I used to be one of those guys that said, never go past parallel, you're going to hurt yourself. But as you get more flexible, wow, that's not even hard. That's just a normal range of motion. The other thing, you did a lot of your sets today. You instructed us to go around 12 reps. Like that kind of is the sweet spot for you, rep-wise.
Yeah, that's the standard, yeah.
Is there any, did you ever go through periods where you would do like the 5s or 6s?
I would deadlift a little heavy when I was fighting the years with Coleman. I would drop down because I was deadlifting 500 pounds. And to be honest, once I started going more reps, it's like I worried about my waist coming in or my hips or whatever else. So if I'm really trying to focus on a body part, it just seemed like I never wanted to do a weight that I would drag other body parts into it. So that's why I fell between the 8 and 12 range. I always said that 8 reps is the least amount you should do. And when you're getting to 8, you should be feeling a slight burn, or you should be feeling the lactic acid build up, and really just work your way. And then of course by 12, you should be pretty good where you're like, okay, I can walk away and get pretty good burn out of this. But listen, the doctor said I didn't go to 15 or 20 sometimes. But I just, the rep range around 10, 12 reps always felt the best for me. And that's just my preference. I can't sit here and tell you I'm a science guy and there's science that shows. But I mean, if you talk to 100 successful bodybuilders, I think they would say the same thing. The rep range is around that.
Yeah, I think 8 to 12 was kind of where I do most of my work. And when I was doing the powerlifting thing, the 4s and 5s would catch up with you. I mean, that would catch up with you though.
But that's a power training. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of base people. I mean, Ronnie started off like that. I mean, I was never a power lifter, although I did 1 rep maxes when I was 18, 19. But I learned if I want to have a career in bodybuilding, it's not something that's sustainable for a long time.
Did you, were you in sports growing up?
I was in football and track.
What events did you do in track?
I was a shot putter and discus thrower.
Yeah. So how good were you?
I was pretty good actually.
Yeah.
I was decent. The funny thing is as I got further in high school, I could only play football because I was working my family business, so I had to steer away from the last 2 years of high school because I was working with my concrete business, my family business, and that's how I really got the body to start, the base. We talk about powerlifting background, that's pretty much powerlifting all day long. I was carrying concrete forms, and I had a great physique when I graduated high school, and I mentioned I joined the gym my 18th birthday, right out of high school. And for the first time in my life, I got out of the construction. I was going to school for criminal justice, and I was working in college as a security job, and I was allowed to eat. So I would spend 8 to 10 at night every day in the gym, and I was one of those guys, when I started training, I looked at every chest piece and I did every chest piece. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Until I got, I met with Chris Aceto, and he kind of wrote out a training protocol for me and kept me to the basics, and that's how I kind of learned. And I put on 50 pounds my first year of training. I was coaxed into competing, same story as Ronnie Coleman. They said, we'll give you a free gym membership.
Wow.
And I was saved up $300 to buy that first membership. And they said, if you competed on our local show, we'll give you, I finished second, and that was when I fell in love with bodybuilding.
Wow. So who was the guy that beat you, do you remember?
Matt Christopher, his name was.
Matt Christopher, I know that name.
But
Big
he was
kid.
good. He was good. He was a good bodybuilder. He won everything in our area, and then, but we had Paul DeMeo there, and Maharaja was from there.
Oh, yeah, he was from Boston, right?
This guy, Victor Terra, was from
Victor
there.
Terra was a Napa guy,
Napa
right?
guy.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yep, and they used to talk about Jeff King. That was kind of before
Beast.
my time. And
He was a beast, yeah.
And listen, Chris Aceto was a pretty established bodybuilder at the time. He was competing, and his
He's a
ex-wife
Laura.
was, she was. So they used to come sleep at my house when I was a teenager, and it was pretty cool to have that status near me and be able to teach me. And I'd eat chicken and pasta every day because that was affordable for me.
Yeah.
But it worked. I mean, it was it really what set the standard, and I was able to progress fast. And today my enjoyment comes by telling people the story on how I started, and really it was just the basics. I mean, I stuck that 6 meal a day diet on my refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
And John, I followed it every single meal. I didn't, how sometimes we say, oh, I don't have steak for meal 3, I'm gonna have it for meal 5. I ate the same foods at the same time every day for 6 months, and he came back and looked at me and said, man, this kid's gonna win the
Discipline. That's amazing that you and Aceto.
I can tell you one thing, I don't sit here to brag about how hard I trained, or I was consistent, but one thing I was dedicated to what I did. Like, I was a machine when it came to the diet, and everyone used to tell me, you're eating too strict, you're not eating, and I always stayed in good shape, and I progressed faster than everyone, and I stayed injury-free, so I can't knock the success. But I was one of the guys that everyone said, I'll never turn pro, I'll never win a pro show, and then I would never win the Mr. Olympia. Every level I got to, I was always shot down by people, he doesn't have the genetics to be, I remember saying, he's a little too blocky, he can't compete. But listen, we set the standard. I mean, things come and go, and if you said today, if you have a complete guy that's a mass monster and he has the right aesthetics, he's going to always beat the guy that's more the aesthetic. So is bodybuilding ever going to go in the aesthetic direction back to no. That's what classic physique is now, and even those guys are a lot bigger.
They're getting bigger than people think.
Yeah,
Right.
even the men's physique guys.
So when you think back over your career, you obviously had a very successful career. Like, what are 2 of your best memories? Like, when you think about whatever has to do with bodybuilding, it doesn't even have to be a show. What are 2 of your best bodybuilding memories that you can think of?
My first would be winning the Tournament of Champions in '95 in California and getting the opportunity to go to Joe Weider's office and him offering me a contract. I was 21, and he said, I want to shoot for the cover of Muscle and Fitness. And back then, remember, this is 1995. The cover of Muscle and Fitness was like, you made it, right?
Huge.
You're on every grocery store aisle.
Yeah.
There's no social media, so forget you younger generation that follow social. I landed the cover of Muscle and Fitness worldwide. This is all languages, and I was on there with a girl, and it was just like, man, I made it. And Joe Weider was offering me a contract. So I knew that I had something special. And then I would probably say winning the Mr. Olympia title, beating Ronnie Coleman, who was my idol. Everyone always said, you're never going to beat this guy. He's going to have to retire, then you'll take over the title. And for me to actually defeat him and change history, that was pretty amazing for me. And then, of course, winning it back. There's a toss-up. Winning it back against Dexter Jackson because I was so complete for that show. We talked about 2001 and how it could have been, should have been, whatever. But 2009 was like, I predicted it. I said I would come back and win it. I knew I would in my heart. I knew I still had gas in the tank, which people questioned because I was 36 at the time. And man, I came back with a vengeance, and I walked out on stage, and when I knew by crowd audience. But the only thing I miss about competing, people ask me, and we talked about this with your competitive, is there a possibility to come back, right? Man, the crowds for me were awesome.
Yeah.
Like when I walked out, and even guest posing, like the place would explode. And I'd come out in Vegas and they'd announce, Jay Cutler, and it was a hometown hero there, So I missed the lights and I missed the crowd, and you know, when I win the title or even when I would lose, I had my fans there. It was amazing. Whether I won or lost, it was always a great experience for me, and I always try to convince people, take the opportunity to get on stage because you're never going to experience anything like it. And that's what got us addicted. I mean, listen, we love to train, there's no question. I mean, the training was the funnest part. The competing, not so much, until I was actually victorious or I was finished, so I could get that fan appeal. But the training I loved, and I love to this day. Like, I wake up every day still eager to train. That's the difference between me and a lot of guys that retire, is I'm retired, but I'm actually more of a excited bodybuilder today. I'm back to what I was when I was 18, 19, 20 every day because it's my vice. That's what I do. That's how I let off all frustration, any stresses. I say I need to train.
That's so cool to hear, man.
So the question is, do I like to train more than you like to train?
That's tough, man. I actually don't ever remember skipping a workout, like ever. I mean, you have scheduled time off, but it's like you said, it's a time of positivity and happiness. But even when things aren't going so well, it's a time to get in and work frustration off the end. But Jay, to me, there was always something about walking out of the gym and knowing you did something like, you know what, most people couldn't have done that. Like, that was some pretty awesome stuff. I didn't think I could do that. Like, there was this feeling of accomplishment that I used to have when I walked out of the gym. You know, not so much now, but you know, when you're at your peak, and that feeling, it is addictive. Like, it feels so good. But I think it's a good addiction. I think pushing yourself to get better is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me what motivated me, and I used to try to think all the time, what motivated me? But you know what motivated me was seeing improvement, which you mentioned now today. I don't think I'm seeing improvement, but I'm maintaining. And I'm looking at, okay, I'm getting older each year. You know, I'm retired. I want to be in a certain shape. And for me, that's what I love about like going to the gym, is I'm able to maintain, I think, a solid physique through my nutrition and everything that I'm doing. It's a lifestyle, and I love the lifestyle. I'll never change. Listen, I still walk to events. I'm still at events every single weekend, so I have this expectation still. I still have a stage where I stand and I greet people, right? So I'm not necessarily gonna take my shirt off or pose my legs with these young guys, you know. But you'll still do that. But
only my legs, though. Yeah. Nothing for the waist up. No shirts are coming off here. Well, listen, this is Jay's birthday. So I've taken up a lot
in a few hours.
In a few hours, it will be his birthday. Tomorrow is actually his birthday, and you'll be 46?
46.
So we're going to get out of here, Jay. You're busy. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the folks here on my YouTube. They, like everybody else in the world, we have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And it's not just because of the titles you won. I know a lot of people won titles, but it's the kind of person you are. And we're at a point in our industry now where there's a lot of things going on where it casts a lot of negative light on the industry. But you've always been the guy that kept the light positive and bright. And I try to do that myself. And so seeing somebody like you, like, I aspire to do that myself. But so we have a tremendous amount of respect for you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. The two best champions, I tell people this all the time. I mean, you got to say Arnold, but you and Lee Haney are the two guys. When I look at, like, man, who are the two guys that I really respect? It's you and Lee Haney. So
I appreciate that.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I'm sure everybody watching this video on my channel also appreciate it.
Round 2 in Las Vegas.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.